Well, a lot of people think that racism doesn't exist in Canada. That everything is fine, and that was such a long time ago, and we should all forget about it. A lot of people think that the more you talk about it, the worse it gets. So we shouldn't talk about racism because it's only amplifying the problem. Those are two that I can think of off the top of my head. And many times people of color are accused of pulling the race card or seeing a race problem where one doesn't exist or making it about race. When really you don't, people who are saying that have not walked in our shoes. And and by saying that, you invalidate all the experiences that person is trying to share with you and trying to.
I think that there's a common misconception that it's been solved. I think people think it's not as big of an issue as it really still is. I think that's one of the biggest issues because if they convince others that it's not still prevalent, then people won't find a reason to try and fight. And I think that's one of the biggest issues still.
That it's intentional, that people, when they engage in racist behavior, that they're not racist if they didn't mean it. It has nothing to do with whether you mean it or not, or whether you intended to be racist. It's what is the impact of your actions. Even when we're talking about human rights, it's not the intent, it's the impact, right? So when you engage in behavior that's racist and that is named and you're called on it, don't go to, well, I didn't mean it. Nobody cares whether you meant it or not. What you need to go to is, I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry that that behavior impacted you in that way, and I will educate myself and change my behavior in the future. It's not about whether you intended it or not. That's the big misconception.
People feel that in certain areas, like, people can't be included in racism, that certain races are like immune to racism. Another misconception is that if you insult someone of your own race using a racial slur, that's not racism, but it's still racism even though it's your own race.
That racists don't marry the people they're racist to or have kids with them. I think that's a common misconception. People are racist and have kids with, like, slave masters had kids with black people. Like, it's just what it is. It's something that hasn't changed. And I think that people think that a proximity to black people equals they're not racist or they can never be because my friend is so-and-so or my friend does this and they respect me, so why doesn't every other black person? That's not the case. I think that's the hugest misconception, is the proximity to black people does not allow you the privileges of what it means to be black.
Some people take racism as something that it's lightly, like they don't take it into consideration that like it's something like it's a big factor in the world. And like for me, I've been around racism through my life. I've been taken, people have been calling me like a Muslim, or like I've been taken into account that I'm wearing a turban, that I'm from Al Qaeda or something like that. Yeah.
I guess that one of the common misconception about racism could be that people of different races that are not Caucasian get offended by things easier than those that are Caucasian. I think that that's a misconception. I think that everybody gets offended equally about different things.
Stereotyping, like putting label on people. Like for instance, like they say Chinese people like dumpling, but like actually the region I am from doesn't eat any dumpling.
A lot of people, in my experience, will say that they don't, like, that they're not racist and they like don't do that kind of thing because they try to make conscious efforts not to. But I think racism is a really internalized part of our society, and even if you don't consider yourself someone racist, it still comes up in like microaggressions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, the microaggressions within our culture are like kind of overlooked. Yeah, and I think definitely just like being aware of when it happens and like
Actually clocking it for yourself and for other people.
Yeah, and not being like ashamed. Well, obviously be, but like not being too proud to say like, oh no, that was racist. Do you know
and
what I mean?
move on from it rather than like, what do you mean? I'm not racist. Yeah, it's kind of a very taboo word.
Yeah.
So even acknowledging that you've done anything along those lines feels like a very like that's not something that people are brave enough to say a lot of the time. So yeah, clocking it for yourself, knowing that it happens,
and being strong enough to clock it when others another's
And
group.
call it out, yeah.
Yeah.